Hello, all you positive heads out there. It's so good to be back with all you beautiful reflections of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. If you're new to this podcast, of course, we are super happy to have you here, and we just ask that you bring an open mind and heart to your listening experience and to be prepared to explore vantage points that I'm convinced will help shift or solidify your current understanding of the ultimate nature of reality. While listening, you'll be exposed to inspiring, empowering, and unifying perspectives that I'm highly confident will yield stellar results in your life if you opt to try them on for size. Also, at optimistic.tv, we have officially begun releasing the first few episodes of our new late-night style, consciousness-elevating video variety talk show, Optimistic, which features live visionary art, soul share interviews, retreat guests here at the Mystic Manor, as well as live musical performances. I'm also super excited to announce that we are currently making plans to release the rest of Season 1 on my personal favorite online streaming service. So stay tuned to optimistic.tv to follow the unfolding development of this exciting Optimistic expansion, as we'll be posting more info and release dates there soon. And in the meantime, be sure to check out, of course, the first few episodes at optimistic.tv as well. All right, all you positive heads, on this week's Soul Share, I'm very excited to have my good friend Jesselynn Desmond. Jesselynn is an oracle, author, coach, and clown with boundless energy. Boundless energy. She is passionate about elevating the consciousness of humanity through divine play. So excited to play with you today, Jesselynn. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you. Oh my goodness, what an intro.
We've been talking about this for a long time.
Yeah.
So yeah, you are definitely someone who's very active in my life. It helped tremendously with all the Optimistic tapings. If you guys think I looked great or looked awful, either way, blame Jesselynn, because she's I should have added stylists. I mean, you have like so many things that you do. It would have been here all day if I added them all. So yeah, great to have you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. That show is just such a magical experience, and I'm looking forward to more.
It's been, there's been some hiccups, along the way. COVID landing the same day we're planning to release, and then getting strung along by Amazon for months, and then finding out it's not after thinking it is going to be released there for a very long period of time. And now but as we always talk about, it's, why is this happening for me? Mm-hmm. And I'm starting to really get that picture with some of the latest and greatest plans. And yeah, not going to get into all that now, but I want to start with the same predictable question that I always start with for you, Jesselynn, and it is this. You're in an elevator. The woman next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You have 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
The elevation of humanity. My passion is helping people remove their blocks or fears or anything that's getting in their way so that they can actually live the happiest, fullest, most playful life according to their dreams and what they've always decided that they have wanted to do.
Beautiful. That is a good plan of attack for life on planet Earth. So I applaud you, and that must be why we're friends. Because
right?
I'm with you. Why don't you share a little bit of your backstory so folks can get an idea of who the heck they're dealing with? I was like, whatever feels relevant. You don't have to tell me what you had for dinner when you were 7 years old on your 7th birthday, although you can. But
that was the best meal I ever had.
You just ruined the whole interview. Everything was going to rotate around that.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a really small town, and where I was at, my mom was a single mother, and my dad was not around, and we didn't have very much money. So there were times when I had to steal food to eat or be babysat at the casinos when my mom's best friend or didn't have a babysitter. I was in and out of foster care because I was also a ward of the court because my mom was very ill. So I just had a very interesting childhood, and I always knew that I wanted to entertain people. I wanted to give people joy because I had been dealt this very awkward hand, right? The hand that you were like, oh man, I don't want
Why do I have 5 jokers and a 2?
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just like, okay, so I always learned to make the best out of everything. And then I moved out here in 95, and that's where my choice of my real training began. And so been here since then. And I've been loving it ever since.
Cool. You came out of, well, actually a little bit sooner than I did. I was here in like late 97 in California. Where did you grow up?
Lake Tahoe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, really beautiful. Love all the hot springs and the lakes and the rivers.
It is lovely.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful place. It's sort of isolated though, right? You're in Tahoe, you kind of stay in Tahoe for the most part. I mean,
right. Well, and then I was technically 11 miles east, which is in the valley. So we would drive up to Lake Tahoe and chill out.
Gotcha. Well, there's so many things, over the years that we've been friends, that so many, amazing conversations about consciousness and, the ultimate nature of reality that we've had. So for you, it's interesting because it's so easy with someone that I don't know that well to just like, okay, what is their main things? There's so many directions we can go with this.
Right.
Maybe a good place to start. I know for a long time you've been very excited to working on your book, and so maybe you can share a little bit about obviously not every little tidbit about it. We do want you to get it when it comes out, but maybe we can start there and we can talk about the book and sort of what
Sure.
What it's about.
Yeah. Kind of piggybacking on what we were talking about before, I moved out here to be an actress. And what I fell in love with is clowning. And being a professional clown now for 25 years, it has taught me to be able to see the truth in the matter of something and break it down in such a way that people can actually have freedom around something. And the way that you would be able to bring it up, even if you're in a different language, you can actually present truths to people in such a way that they can hear it where their ego is dropped so they can actually be free of whatever it is that specific issue is. They say the fool was the person that the king listened to because they didn't really have anything to lose. Right. Yeah, and so they were the ones who were hired to tell the entire village what is going on and make fun of the king because it was what needed to be done.
Right.
And the king would be laughing, right?
Right.
And so there's something about the sacred and the profane that I've always really, really been attracted to. And from a very young age, I was seeing things such as my mom dying before she died and my grandpa dying before he died and my grandma. And I always thought, these are just really uncomfortable dreams or whatever. And then when my mom passed when I was 14, and then I moved out here and I went to American Academy of Dramatic Arts. When I was immersed into the academy, I just was getting downloads and downloads and downloads. And that's where I was like, whoa, this is really intense. And so I kind of shut it off for a while. And then once I graduated college, I started revisiting that subject again, the psychic abilities, and like, why would I know that she was going to be wearing a blue shirt? Because I would see the stain on her shirt that she would get after she would spill her coffee, and I'd be like, I knew she was wearing a blue shirt. And then sure enough, in the afternoon, she would, I spilled my coffee, and I'm like, it's right in the same spot that I saw her spill her coffee in my dream.
Wow.
So, these things are real. And after further research and further studying, I realized that every human is psychic. Every human has the ability to be psychic.
For sure.
And it's really all about how can we support this? How can we feed our own intuition? How do we determine and decipher what is our intuition and what is our intelligence?
Right.
And so that is where my book lies. And as a kid, I was always like, how come there's an instruction manual for this dumb little toy? There's an instruction manual for this crazy thing, but there's no instruction manual for the human.
Yep.
So that's what my book is. My book is an instruction manual that your creator forgot to give to you.
It's so funny because, as you know, I'm working on a book right now too. And literally in the first chapter, I talk about like the lack of instruction manual that we were born with.
Oh,
so,
nice.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a lot of overlaps with us.
I know, right?
Yes, so true. So I know you played with a few different names. Path of Least Resistance is going to be the name of the book?
Yep, it's going to be The Path of Least Resistance, and we're still working with the second title. The publisher is determining what's going to be the best. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I guess there's some algorithms and ways to test what titles are the best, and so they're handling that. I was originally going to be titling it Polar Living, which is the acronym, Path of Least Resistance, but for people it was a little too confusing. What's polar living?
Yeah, do I gotta move to Antarctica and live with the polar bear?
Yeah, right. Does that mean you have psychological problems because you're bipolar? Right. But in a sense, there is something to be said about polar. Being polarism. This world is all about polarity, and you can only think about one thing at a time. So you're either coming from your head or you're coming from your heart.
Right.
And if you're coming from your heart, you're always going to be in the right. And if you look at your body as a place where there is a North Pole and a South Pole, your head being the North Pole, your tailbone being the South Pole, and what's right in the middle? Your heart.
Right.
And it's heart-based living. Heart-based living is going to get you everywhere that you want to go in life. And, your head brings you fear-based living. And there's one thing, it's important to use critical thinking when you're making decisions and stuff, but it's also really important to really tap into your instinct. So
Right.
Yeah, and that's what this book is all about, is tips and tricks on how to help you tap into yourself using the spirit, body, and mind principalities. So it's aligning your spirit, body, and mind such that they are all working together, and they're all working together, and that you are using each section to help each other. So for instance, if you are having a really hard time being motivated working out, right? And you're just like, I can't seem to do it, but yet you can be, doing other things. Well, if you're having a hard time accomplishing one of the triangles, then start reading. Start elevating one of the other areas. So working on your mind. Maybe start learning a language. Because when you actually elevate one of the other areas, all of a sudden then now you have motivation. Now you've been learning this language, and now you're like, oh, actually, now I can listen to my language tape while I'm going for a jog.
Right.
And so by going in the back door is what I say. It's like a lot of people are like, you just have to do this. And then if you don't do it, then you make yourself wrong. You're like, oh, I should have worked out today. Now I don't. Now I feel like a loser. And instead of doing that, work on another area that might be easier within the mind, body, and spirit, within the goals. And so I have a coaching program that goes through and helps you figure out how to do this and what are all the things you can do in each of these areas in your life in accordance to what goals that you would like to achieve.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a really important point, is a lot of times it's so easy for us to get caught up on, okay, here's the thing that I have to do now. And what I've started to do is, is really try and tap into what is it that most excites me to do now. And it is all so connected. So, for example, working out. Well, I may not feel like working out, but if I go and sit in the sun for a few minutes, then all of a sudden I feel more energized. It changes my state, and all of a sudden now I'm motivated to work out.
Exactly.
And certainly one of the biggest traps is this self-deprecation, that people fall into, and it's like beating themselves up.
Blame and shame, and just and then it sends you on a downward spiral.
Yep. And what you touched on at first, opening your heart and being aware of what is the most heart-centered decision. I mean, obviously the brain has its purpose, and probably not going to use my heart to do complex mathematical equations, although I might.
Right.
But, when you get into the state of, and that's something, knowing you well, you're always in that sort of heart space. Energetically, it feels like you're always super open-hearted, and it creates a certain field around a person as they train themselves to be that way, where it's like, oh wow, they feel really good to be around. It's like that. It's so easy in our current world to be bogged down with like the mental stuff. Whew. I mean, you can literally spend all day every day, especially if you're someone who's really driven and entrepreneurial or something. I think for me, it's like I have never-ending to-dos that can take never-ending mental power, and I have to really watch myself and say, oh, now's I have so much to do. Now's a perfect time for me to go for a walk,
right.
And to just get into an open-hearted state, and or find a way to just do something very simple, sharing with someone else, or using my heart, power, if you will, my heart light, to lift someone else up, and then all of a sudden you'll find some of these other things that you were stewing on will open up through the back door, like you said.
Right. Well, and also having your heart be open and in that space, it actually allows for the coalescence between the heart and brain, and so then there's actually more possibilities. There's more things available to you. There's more things that come to you because of that.
Right. Yeah, it's like, are you familiar with the book The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer? Have you heard about this?
I have heard about it, yeah. I have not read it.
Oh, it's so good. I love, what he talks about is the heart is the only thing that matters when you're, once you really understand how things are working, is that you have your heart open. So if you look at, if you really look at yourself, most people are subconsciously opening and closing their heart. If this happens, I open my heart. If I smell this thing that my grandmother used to cook and I have good memory at my grandmother's, my heart opens. If, on the flip side of that, if they used to beat me every day and she always was cooking, green bean casserole, and I smell green bean casserole, I'm like, my heart is closed and I'm running for the door. So what he talks about in the book is, being aware that when your heart is open, you are tapped into your higher self, chi, source, whatever you want to call it, and you're allowing that energy to flow through you. So
100%.
And then it becomes the only game in town is to pay attention to where's my heart at now, and is it open?
Right.
And if it's always open, and you train yourself to always leave it open, regardless of external circumstances, instead of this, like, if our bodies are like, Ferraris, what we have been doing is like smashing the gas, hitting the brake, smashing the gas, hitting the brake. Well, what if you just always have the gas line wide open?
Right.
You're constantly allowing this source, this gasoline, this fuel to flow through you. Then it becomes like, oh my gosh, he's not turning the faucet off.
Yep.
And it starts to bubble over.
And it's not wasteful.
Right.
And
there's
really,
infinite at your disposal.
Yep,
it's really
free energy.
Yeah, right.
And so that's what my book is there's many techniques to use to help you stay in that state. And so you can access that state through the spirit, through the body, and through the mind. And so there's different techniques according to whichever way you're going, whichever door you're going in, per se. And so, when you are in a playful state, you are keeping your heart open. And that's why it's really important, when people get really serious, entrepreneurs like us, like we're always like, we got to work. But we can also tend to be bogged down with not playing, even though we are very playful people.
Totally.
And it's important that, when you're in a playful state, your heart is open naturally.
Yep.
So that, my book has many techniques for that. So,
would you like to share a few as a sneak peek?
Sure. Yeah. I guess one of the, a couple things came up for me when you mentioned that. So the first thing I'm going to share with you is, this is a phrase that I like to use in situations where I feel stuck. And you're trying to make a decision, and you're like, should I do this? Because I really need to do this and this and this and this, but then I don't want that to happen. And so you ask yourself, you get into a really quiet meditative state. I like to close my eyes. I like to put my non-dominant hand on my heart and take, several deep breaths. And then after I've done that, then you can ask yourself in your mind, what would love do? And generally, it's always the right answer. Because, a lot of times you'd be like, well, should I go to this thing because I don't want to disappoint my mom, or do this and do this. And then you say, what would love do? And you're like, actually, I really don't want to do that. And
self-love is number one.
Self-love is number one. You have to put on your own mask before you put on anyone else's. So that's definitely a phrase that I find myself asking myself constantly, because it's really easy to get into fear. And especially right now, because of what is going on in the world.
Right.
There's so much fear porn out there that it's
fear porn
that people are addicted, and it's really insane.
Yeah.
People love fear porn.
Yeah, they really. Yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing, and I literally give such little amount of energy to any of the fear porn. I've never heard you say that. I don't watch the news. I don't I just focus on taking care of myself, and just, I don't want to be, the COVID thing is particularly challenging. It's a real, it really screws with your mind more than most, because it's like, oh, okay. Yeah. Well, okay. Brandon, you've said your whole life you don't believe in getting sick, and for the most part, you've never been sick,
right?
Not an ache or pain, or ever been in the hospital.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, but guess what? You could contract it, not know it, and give it to your diabetic mother or whatever. And it's like, oh, I see. You're really tricky. All right. So, so really finding the balance, I think, for people, no matter where you fall on the spectrum, this thing has really caused us all to have to check, double check, triple check where our head's at. And at the end of the day, for me, I come back, I'll take in all the information that I do have, and then say, okay, what is my, intuition telling me now? Is it not even thinking about it. Yeah. I actually just put my non-dominant hand on my heart.
Yeah.
And so, that has led me really, really well. I think the more the storm swirls around us, and the more fear that's coming at us, and the more, okay, you're not going to bite on the fearful part for yourself. How about here's some logic, or fear that you can harm someone else because of your complacence or whatever. And so at the end of the day, for me, it just coming back to, okay, I've taken all that into account mentally. Now, what is my heart saying? What is my intuition telling me? And I think that's one, as an oracle, that you obviously have worked on a lot as well, right? Your intuitive abilities. And
even when my intuitive abilities were just flooding into me, especially when I was really young and I didn't have any control over it, I literally had to do everything I could to shut it out, went through different periods of my life where I was using different substances to just be like, shut it down, right? And, as an adult. And then also, I didn't really know anybody in my family that was psychic. I didn't know. And so for me, my family kind of made me wrong for it. Oh, that's not true. That's not this. No, that's not true. And then I was like, oh, and then they die. And I was like, okay,
Can't argue with it now.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, exactly. Something I've been feeling a lot out there, I tend to feel everyone's fear and feel everyone's pain. Especially lately, I've been very sensitive, so it's just sometimes I'll just break down in tears because it's so intense and so much. And there's a lot of people being tied up with each other, that there's family disputes and maybe quarrels and arguments, and so I have come up with this thing. It's called win-win. And when you are trying to work through a situation with your lover or your business partner or your friend, and instead of just arguing points, you did this and you did that, because you can't go back into the past and change anything. So it's really, what can we do from this point forward? How can we help each other from this point forward?
Yep.
And so what I like to do is create win-win situations. And win-win situations are if you are having a hard time communicating your words to another person, or if they're not at a space to listen, you can also do this separately, where you guys sit next together in a room. You guys can light a candle, sit and take some deep breaths together with your eyes closed, and then when you guys feel comfortable, maybe 5 minutes after, then each take a piece of paper and write down all of the things that you would like to see from this point forward. No judging, you did this wrong because you did this, because you did... No, be like, well, what I would like is, I would love for us to get along. What I would love for us to do is actually go to dinner. What I would love for this to do is this. And then when you guys are done, then you guys put your lists side by side, and you guys actually make it work. Figure out how you can actually help each other win. Because the truth is, if if one person isn't winning, nobody's winning.
Right.
And that is where I am hoping that, to get people to that state is that when everybody's winning and everybody feels good, it's not to say that you're going to always get your way, but there is a way to actually create win-win situations, even in every situation, if everybody is willing to do that.
Right. Right. Yeah. If you can, I love that. If you can approach it with that, I think that was a big one for me to overcome, and still a work in progress at times, where, it's so easy to get into this sort of mindset of, oh, well, I'm actually right, and let me prove that I'm right, and let me dig my feet in. And the more we talk about this, the more I'm digging my feet in. And when you start realizing, it's like, would you rather be right or happy?
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
And so, it's a lot of times,
what does being right actually do for you?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Right.
It feeds the ego.
Right.
And ultimately, it's like, I'd rather just everybody be happy.
Yep.
Because that's going to make your life better. It's going to make their life better. And it's not a matter of just like rolling over and letting someone step all over you, but it's really about like, what is that need to be right?
Yep. Right. Wrong.
Right.
Wrong. Right. I learned this. I had a very successful business partner in the past who this was a great lesson from him, was like, we'd go down that road of like, okay, well, here's why, here's the reason why, and it needs to be explained to them, and it's like, no, that's all wasted energy.
Yeah.
There's no point. What are you going to explain to them the why or make your case or whatever? Let's just cut to the chase of where it goes from here. And it's, it saves so much valuable energy. And if you can get your ego untangled from, being right, you can actually get on with creating results.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think that's a big one for a lot of us to kind of, and many never find it, but.
Right. Yeah, and it's like being right doesn't really do anything for you. I mean, you can still know you're right, and then well, the thing is if you are not as fighting to the death on your righteousness, it's really lovely, because I'll tell you what, it does come back around, and then they're like, oh, I realized you were right.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and if you're not being a total jerk off, then it really allows them the space to be like, oh, actually, you know
sink
what?
in.
Yeah, and then they
message.
give them the opportunity to learn something on their own. And I think that's one of the hardest things of being a parent, although, you're a dad, a really awesome dad. And I think that's one of the hardest things about being a parent, is letting your kids learn the lessons on their own.
Yeah.
And that's part of what this, like, you don't need to tell your kid you're right. Just be like, this is what it is, and if they make a mistake, they're going to have to deal with it.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And it's about loving someone and trusting someone enough to give them the opportunity to learn through their mistakes, because ultimately the truth will always come out.
Yep.
It's
that idea of teaching a child, how to think, not what to think. Like, oh, here's the approach that I recommend.
Right.
I'm not going to, you decide what it means to you using this, and I think that's...
You're like, Dad, I took out the car.
Yeah. Bradley made it really easy because he's such like an, ancient soul in a little body. So when he's a little, I'm like, how old are you again? Like,
he's
are
so
you
cute.
are you 4 or 40? Like, and so it made it extra easy, but so I can't take too much credit. But yeah, it was me taking that approach of always being really transparent, sharing with him where my own challenges were, not making something super taboo that's out there in society. It made it so that he wasn't really concerned about, he didn't run to go take substances or be, a problem child, because it was all so transparent with our relationship. And I think that's another thing with, blocks between people, is a lot of times people are talking with, around things or hiding things, or this manipulative energy is tied into it. And it's just like, that's such an old paradigm way to interact with people. It's like, just get to the I find the more I can get to the root of it and share what, why I'm challenged, or where, instead of just like thinking it, not saying it, then it's like if you're thinking it and you're interacting with the person and then energetically
they can feel
it's
it.
felt, but then they don't maybe necessarily even understand, because then it's like, well, am I going crazy, or is he acting weird, or just get it out. Like the more you can clear up, energy and blocks, the better you'll be. So, people who take it and you shove it down inside, it's the most detrimental thing you can do for yourself, your health, your relationships. So,
I mean, oftentimes a lot of people don't even know that they're doing that because it's just a program, or it's just what their dad did. It's just what their mom did. And, I have one of the chapters in my books talks about triggers. And so, oftentimes when you are having a dialogue with someone and you guys are not seeing eye to eye, it typically is, they might be upset about the dishes, right? And they're just harping on you. You said you were going to do the dishes this time and this time. And so they're triggered and they're in this triggered state. And so I have a bunch of techniques that you can actually learn to disarm people's triggers and learn to recognize when someone is triggered and that it's not really about the dishes, right? Mm-hmm. And so once you get into the practice of utilizing these tools, you can be looking someone directly in the eye and be like, I am so sorry that I didn't do the dishes, and actually going, what's really going on? So you're able to put into practice the discovery of what is really going on at the heart of the matter, because it's never really just about the dishes.
Right.
It's never really about the same argument that you have. I mean, maybe money is a specific thing, but there is also, like, in relationships, there's maybe not enough time given to the relationship, or not enough sacred time given to the relationship, whereas then couples tend to quabble about money. But if you're actually having that sacred time where you're really genuinely connecting and having that time, the arguments about money are way less, if at all, because you're actually keeping that relationship sacred. And so it's really not about the money. Right. It's about the underlying foundation of relationships, right, and how and what has been held sacred and what has not been held sacred.
Right.
And so it's about utilizing tools that help you identify that within yourself, and then being able to make clear, strong requests from other people in such a way that they can either decide, yes, I'm up for this, or no, I'm not, and then you'll at least know. But being able to clearly ask for what you need is super important. And it's one of the phrases in the Bible that's written the most amount of times, and they word it in different ways. In my book, I put all the different Bible quotes in there, but it's ask and you shall receive.
Yeah.
And so we have to, as humanity, know what works for us and what doesn't. And it's not about you aren't this, you aren't that. It's literally like, this is what I need for myself, and what I would like to see is this. Is this something that you're game for? And you'd be surprised at how much time you will save in these relationships that people are like, I don't know if I should ask him about that yet. When you're first dating somebody, I like to lay it out all on the table. So do you want kids? Do you want to raise them with a religion? All these things, because...
What do you think about me dressed as a clown in bed?
Or, right. Or even dressed as another sex. It's like, just like getting
just
out.
Kidding. You haven't told me that one, although it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, right. That's hilarious.
Wow, yeah. Our triggers are our treasures, and when you can, just approach it from that, like, okay, let's. I'm feeling something come up right now, and I want to address it. And you're not washing the dishes, but I think perhaps, okay, let me check in with myself. Is it really the dishes, or is it the fact that you've worked late the last week straight? And so, and then just like working through it and understanding, like, most of the time when someone is getting upset or whatever, it's not personal. It's like they're having their own. It's
generally
process.
Because their needs are not being met.
Right.
And that's generally that's the main issue of why people even argue, is their basic needs are not being met.
Yeah. Right.
Another really important factor for creating really powerful, strong relationships is to create good health within yourself, and so I find that there's this term, it's called hangry. It's like a mix between hungry and angry.
Right.
And so,
Definitely been there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I've had partners who, if they were hangry, we would get in disagreements or there would be bickering, just random wastes of time and energy and life force. And so, part of the path of least resistance is actually getting all of these things into alignment. And disease comes from when your mind, body, and spirit, when you act as if they're not all connected. And so, someone could be doing something for a long time, but then doing one thing in another area that is completely backtracking every other area of their life. Say maybe, I run every day, but you're a chain smoker and you're an alcoholic. It's like everything is connected, right? Or, and so when you start working on slowly but surely in all these different areas, then you can lift it up. But health is the number one personal thing. So knowing what works for you, having a plan that you're actually physically moving your body, and then also putting in nutrients that are actually going to be feeding your spirit, body, and mind. And so that is another thing to be very mindful of. And so I love that there's a community now, Path of Least Resistance community, where people can get together and have sounding boards to be able to have accountability buddies. So that's another thing that I love.
Accountability buddies.
Yeah, so I have my clients, I assign them accountability buddies that someone is actually there to hold each other accountable for their greatness. Because I think that that's one of the hardest things is for me, like I would never disappoint you, right? I'd never disappoint my friends, like on purpose, right? But with myself, I'm like, oh, well, whatever, I'll just do it another time.
Right.
But when you have an accountability buddy, then you actually are held accountable to someone else to do the specific goal by the specific time, and it's a weekly accountability buddy. So that's really awesome, and I have needed it. I mean, everybody, no matter how disciplined or how driven they are, needs accountability buddies. And so that's been really helpful for me as well. So if there's something that any of you guys are going through, and if you're like, I need help, like motivation working out, call up a neighbor or go knock on a neighbor's door. Say, hey, do you want to do this neighborly night walk? Like, organize something in your neighborhood where you have to be held accountable for this, where it's actually going to be benefiting everybody, right?
Right.
So, or find someone else who has that same goal that you want to achieve, because we're all human, we like a lot of the same things. Find someone else who also wants to achieve that goal so that you can create accountability within each other. And it's also way more fun to do it with somebody else, right?
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, you're doing this weekly walk in your neighborhood, and the whole neighborhood gets to know each other. They get to meet each other. It's like you can actually create something for other people that will give meaning not only to your life, but to theirs. And guess what? Your body looks good.
Yeah.
Right?
No, that's great. Very, very true that it's so much, what is the saying that comes to mind? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so, having someone to take the ride with. I mean, it's why we're these, beings that always want to pair up with someone else. It's like, romantically or otherwise, it's like we thrive from community and from sharing and connecting. And so I think that's a really great point. Like with, this sort of work, there's someone out there listening right now in the middle of, Nebraska who's like, everyone in my town would think this is some woo-woo pseudoscience.
What's up, Omaha?
Yeah, exactly. So, there's this beautiful thing called the internet where there's a lot of people, like the Positive Heads Facebook group. There's 10,000 people there where, that are of like mind to some degree, or
there's
they wouldn't have landed there.
Yeah, that would be wanting the same thing. And just connect with them on that Facebook group.
Yeah, put it out there. Hey, I'm looking for someone to create an accountability around X, Y, or Z. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful, tool.
Yeah.
And as someone who actually can tend a lot of times to kind of go fast alone, I can certainly see the value of, slowing down. I love community. I love connecting with others. And I also can find myself sometimes like, I have that tendency to like, get out of my way. I got stuff to do. You're slowing me down, Whereas,
totally.
Some of the most rewarding stuff, experiences and growth comes from, bumping up against someone else, sharing the journey with someone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool. Love that. So let's see. What else should we talk about? I mean, you know, as someone, you've done so much cool stuff. You've really lived sort of a dream life. Clowning, of course, is part of your journey, and performance art. Maybe you can talk a little bit about, some of that.
Sure. Yeah. I moved out here, like I said, in 95, and the Academy would not let us do any jobs or work until we were done with the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. So that was like a 2-year thing. And then after that, I basically met these group of people who we loved going to music festival, or there was not really music festivals there. We would go to parties, basically. Mm-hmm. I think they called them raves.
Uh-huh. Right.
I think they called them raves back then. And we were this group of the Orange Kids, and we just decided that we could probably throw better parties than the ones that we were going to, ones that, the main core group was like, we want to provide free water. We want to, we don't want to have all these wasted water bottles. We saw a lot of the things that were wrong with those places, and we want to create sacred experiences. So we would create these environments that were magical, but also had, different playful elements, so that the environment itself would be playful. Mm-hmm. And then we have performers that would come and help activate the spaces. Mm-hmm. And so that's pretty much how Lightning in a Bottle was found.
Right.
And so from there,
which ended up being one of the biggest transformational festivals
right?
in the world. Yeah,
I know. It's kind of crazy to think back then. It was all around the boys' birthday, the twins' birthday. And,
really?
And we started off, that was the very first
I had
one.
Dee Dee, I think, on the show years ago.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I love them.
Yeah.
They're so great. And Dream is such a gem as well. So that basically shaped my whole life, and I basically ran away with the circus, and so touring around the world. So we also have other friends, because as we are performing at festivals around the world, becoming friends with those festival people, then we would go and, I specifically would also help do production with other festivals like Envision Festival or Boom, and we would be performing at those festivals, and then when we would come back to our festival, LIB, then they would come and do their thing too. So it was kind of like this traveling community of people mm-hmm. that we were in each other's lives for 25 years. And I often didn't even know where any of these people lived. I'd just be like, oh, hey, how are you?
Yeah.
And then they'll tell me, oh, I live in Mexico. I'm like, what? Really?
Yeah, right.
Because we see each other
all
like
the time.
5 to 6 times a year at least.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see that now there is pretty much a music, now there's nothing.
Now there's VR Burning Man happening at the moment.
Yeah.
Speaking of, Reed, who does the harmonic lights,
yes,
has set up down, where we shoot the show, Optimistic, down
mm-hmm.
in there. He's set up for this week a big TV and like VR goggles and the whole thing. So if you want to get your VR burn on,
no way,
we have it all set up.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing. Yeah, it's funny because over the course of these 25 years, how many music festivals there are, or how many festivals are even out there, which is awesome and it's great. But I like going back to the day of just like there was only like a handful, right?
Yeah.
So, needless to say, in that work, I've also always had my little oracle booth because there's, so many people have so many questions, and because people are not practiced into the space of tapping into their intuition, I like to be of service for people. And so I've also done that simultaneously while I'm doing the other things at the festivals. And so then that kind of took over. And then at the Symbiosis, which was the festival in Oregon.
Oregon Eclipse.
I was getting ready to go out with my friends, and all of a sudden, literally, I felt electricity channeling through the very top of my head, going down to the root of my tailbone, and it felt like it was shooting out of my tailbone about like a foot or 2 feet, and it was really intense. And all of a sudden, my hands grab a pen, and I start just looking for paper, and I didn't have any paper. I was going to a music festival. And so I just find myself ripping up brown trash bags and just start writing. And I started channeling my book.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, my friends are like, hey, are you going to come out and watch this music with me? I'm like, no, I'm still writing. And I was on that chair for like 14 hours straight. I did go to the bathroom or whatever.
Wow.
But then the next day I was still there writing. My friend's like, hey, you said you were going to come out with us. I was like, I know, but I'm still writing. Then they're like, well, will you come out to the water with me today? I'm still writing. So I spent 3 days writing in that chair.
Wow.
I didn't do anything else.
Wow.
Yeah. And so my friend's like, you came here to relax and to not work. It was actually my first festival that I went to where I wasn't performing or working.
And then you went and started working.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was like, well, they're like, I thought you said you weren't working. And I'm like, I'm not. It's just coming through me. And so that was the beginning of The Path of Least Resistance, which is my book, which is all of the best ways that I could imagine living that helped me get out of my way.
Yeah.
But a lot of it came from source. A lot of it came from personal experiences. And a lot of it, was channeled.
Wow. I did not know that. That's cool. So for anyone who is, obviously your life has been a dream and been very creative, and there's someone out there listening, or more than one, I'm sure, who've had a very much more traditional sort of trajectory and path, and 20 years in corporate accounting or whatever, and they're thinking, gosh, I want to like travel around. Well, if there was festivals, when after the COVID the apocalypse ends, and festivals start again, I'd like to travel the world and be creative. And, I think of my friend I was just talking to, who was like, yeah, I made $7,000 last year at festivals and I lived like a king, because he's like just living and being and having so much fun. And he's like, anything I ever wanted, it was just there, like if I wanted a great meal, it was at arm's length, arm's length, it would just appear.
That's how it works when you're living in the flow.
Yeah. And, and from a financial standpoint, he's like, poor, and so I thought that was a really cool point. And you've done all this cool creative stuff. I mean, what do you say to the person who's got the mortgage and the kids and wants to is telling that story, that narrative is playing in their head of, oh well, yeah,
I can't do
if
this.
If I had started when I was 21 maybe, and now I'm 41 and it's too late, and yada yada yada. What do you say to that person to help them?
Sure. Yeah. Well, the first thing that I would say is that it is never too late. It doesn't matter if you're 80, 90 years old. It really doesn't matter. There's no such thing as never too late, except for that you die and haven't tried.
Yep.
That's the only time it's too late.
And even then, you probably find that you get the option to come back into 3D and experience that same character in a different timeline.
And in a different body.
That's another podcast. So.
Yeah, right?
Save that one for another day.
2.0. Yeah, I have a coaching program that helps people actually segue out of whatever it is, transition out of the things that they don't want into the things that they do want. And that's a monthly coaching program. But what I would say, for those of you who are just wanting to, just yearning for something more, I would say the first thing that you want to do is whatever you commit to, you will achieve. So that being said, is if you want to have more creativity in your life, you have to schedule it. You have to plan it. And if you have a hard time, especially if you have kids, do it with your kids.
Right.
If you're like, I always used to draw, but now I don't have time to draw. Guess what? Hey kids, guess what? It's drawing day.
Yeah,
right? So chances are, if you have a family, and if you are blaming your family on not being able to live your dreams or do the things that you want, reconsider and just know that your family will benefit and prosper by seeing you light up, by seeing you live your dreams, by seeing you do the things that you've always wanted to do, because it actually comes out of your pores and your light will light up everyone else. There's this experiment that they do with these things that they're knocking these beads, right? And they're all going at a different pace. And then when you put them all together, they all start syncing up together because they're just near each other. And that's how it works. So if you are consistently putting out this energy of not being satisfied, not feeling good, not happy, you are negatively affecting everyone in your family, your partnerships, your kids. And your kids are watching how you do things. So if they're watching you not live your dreams, then you're teaching your child to not live theirs. And so it start small. Start with, 1 day a week. And if you can commit to 5 minutes a day, every day, doing something that you've always wanted to do. You always wanted to learn French? Prove it. Mm-hmm. Start learning. Watch a 5-minute YouTube video every single day on French. Mm-hmm. Get your kids involved. Get your wife involved. If no one that I've just mentioned wants to be a part of it, there's plenty of people online. There's Facebook groups. There's people all around the world who also want to learn this. And you know what? There's so many tools like Zoom and Skype that you can actually practice for 5 minutes a day. Go onto Positive Head Podcast Facebook group, find somebody there, and elevate yourself. If you don't do the work, no one is going to do it for you. And I guarantee you, if you just do 5 to 20 minutes a day and commit to it on something that you're passionate about, it will change your life.
Yeah.
Because your energy will be different. So therefore you're affecting your kids differently. And all of a sudden you're in this happier mood because you're like, oh, I actually did that. You ever notice how long it takes you to work out? Like you're like, oh, I just don't want to work out. But once you start doing it, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I feel good. And all you actually have to do is do it.
Yep.
Stop thinking. Less
that
thinking, more
procrastination
doing.
Is the biggest hurdle.
Right. And the procrastination is ego. It's mind. It's all you're doing is thinking. Stop thinking.
Yep.
And start doing.
And you don't have to eat the whole elephant in one sitting. You just have a little taste. It's a vegan elephant, by the way. This is made of Brussels sprout, shaped like an elephant, for all my vegan friends out there.
Like me.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. And Joe Dispenza actually talks about this from a scientific perspective. It's like, if you're doing everything the exact same way over and over, energetically, you're locked into a pattern, and you're going to keep creating the same results.
Yep.
Just those little shifts. You don't have to, Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah.
You don't have to do, okay, this is my new life, let me get out my clown suit and go to the office and, no, do 5 minutes. Although I like that.
I like that one too.
5 minutes, just something little. It's the butterfly effect, right?
Yeah.
Something little can then cause those, one little change, get up 5 minutes earlier and, do that creative thing or whatever it is. And you're going to shift the trajectory of your life. You've changed the energetic flow, and you've opened up new possibilities. I mean, all you need to do is meet the universe a little bit. I mean, Abraham talks about this. It's like, even just stop the resistance and just allowing is enough.
Yeah.
But we build up so much resistance, why we can't do something.
We're stuck in that story, and we want to be right about the story.
Yep.
Well, I don't have time. So you keep saying this thing that's not true.
Yep. Right.
It's about making the time.
Yep.
Right?
It's just not a priority. And
right.
You've got whatever, Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right.
Yes.
And so I think that is a huge, simple step to start shifting things in your world. You want to be more creative? Here's the magic solution. Be more creative.
Yeah.
And start with 30 seconds a day, and then a minute, and then 5 minutes, and then, and start opening up that flow. You're inviting that energetic field into your reality when you do, and then it can start working on shifting things so that, what do you know? This thing freed up to create more time that I couldn't even have foreseen happening. And you know what I mean? The ripple of impact of it all.
So I would love to leave your listeners with, this is, I just felt divinely inspired to share this because this is one of my greatest tools that I have ever used for the greatest transformation in my life, besides repetition of doing, meditation and all of that. So the last 5 minutes that you're awake before you fall asleep is the time when you are basically in this hypnagogic state, and you have the ability to reprogram yourself, your mind, your thoughts. You're able to rewire your own consciousness. And this has been proven in science by many people. And so this is one of the techniques I teach in my book and I work with my clients. So think of I call it a mantra or something like that. So for instance, if you want to be more creative or you want to have a more fulfilling life and you just feel really stuck, you could come up with a mantra such as, I feel, or I am so grateful that I have the time and the ability to express my creativity. I am so grateful that I have the time and the ability to express my creativity daily. So whatever it is your phrase is, and you can change it every night. But what you want to do is you want to repeat this over and over and over in your head, silently in your mind. So you're not keeping your wife or your husband awake. And they're like, what are you saying? You're like, nothing, honey. But you basically do that until you wake up in the morning. And you want to do that every night, and I have also, this may sound crazy, I've actually worked on my own physical body that way. Working on changing something physical in my body with my health or whatever. I mean, I've healed myself by doing this. And you can do it too. And so that's my game and my challenge to you guys. Try it. And I'd love to see what you guys come up with and what comes out. I have an Instagram. It's called Oracle Jesselynn, and that's spelled OracleJessellynn. And I do Ask the Oracle every Monday and Friday. So if you would like help in how to create the most effective mantra for realigning and for meditation purposes, please ask the Oracle, and I will get back to you. And also, I have a coaching program, so if you're ready to take your life to the next level, and you want someone and a program to help you get there with grace and ease, I am available for that. I have a monthly coaching program, and I also do private sessions. So if you want someone to just meet with once a month to help you create structure in your life so that you can start making these powerful, positive changes, I am available for you. And we were talking about this earlier, Brandon, I would like to offer all of your listeners who mention Positive Head, that you guys heard about the coaching and the sessions through Positive Head, I am offering 10% discount to you guys. So, but you got to mention Brandon and Positive Head, and
actually, you get 11% if you tell her how amazing. Thank you for that. That's really, really cool. I appreciate you doing that, and I know they do too. And you're such a light. And
you can also go to my website, which is polarliving.com, and that's POLR living, LIVING.com.
I actually, as we wind down, one of the things I'm not letting you get off with, though, without, is sharing a story of synchronicity, serendipity, or a positive paranormal story.
Ooh.
I know you've got something fun up your sleeve.
Okay, well, the positive paranormal story, I like that you say positive, because that's a good one. Well,
save the demon possession story for another day?
Yeah, right.
You know what? If you want the first negative, because I'm sure we'll spin it positive in the end anyway. So,
well, right.
It's all happening for love.
Exactly, because everything is happening as a gift. I think, serendipity and that happens so much in my life, and I notice that when I'm really in alignment and really taking action on all my goals and my dreams, that the synchronicity is daily, even by the minute. And This happens every single day. I'll be like, I'll just randomly go out to my mailbox, and I was getting ready to leave a note for the UPS people on how to leave my package, and because I was leaving, and then they would send my package back. As I'm going out, they're coming in, and they normally deliver at 9 p.m. at night. So things like that always happen. But I would say the most significant synchronicity story for me, when I realized that it's real, is this was when I was, I think this was 1996 or 1997. And because I grew up in the country, and I would see dead animals on the road, and I would pull them off the road and go and bury them. I'm kind of weird like
wow.
that. Or if I see, birds or whatever, and being in the circus, we would, instead of buying dead animals at a store, like feathers and stuff, we would harvest them from the animals that we found, around, because we didn't want to kill any animals for our costumes. We would actually just only harvest them from nature, naturally. So anyway, actually, I think this was probably 90, it was maybe a little bit later than that, but I would really, 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 really wanted a fur coat. And I was coming out here, and I didn't bring any coats because I was like, California's warm.
Yeah, right.
I don't need anything. But I saw this really cute, like these fur coats that were hoodies. and I really wanted one, and I was like, okay, well, I'm not gonna buy that. There's no way. I wasn't a vegan then, but I am now.
Yep.
So anyway, I was like, forget about it, and I thought, I'll never be able to afford a fur coat. Although I didn't think that in my mind, but I definitely did think that. I didn't consciously think that. And so anyway, I was driving down the 2 freeway, which is not necessarily a packed freeway, but there was major traffic, and I was just like, this is weird. And then I look up at the side of the road, and I was like, oh no, an animal died. I'm like, oh my God, this looks like a dog or a cat, or no, it's a cat or something. And I literally pulled off the freeway. I'm on the freeway, but it's like bumper to bumper.
To do your good deed that's so weird that no one else would ever do.
No one else would ever do. And so I pull over, and I'm like, oh gosh, where's a stick? I need a stick to like pull this thing off. And I start looking at it. I'm like, I don't see any blood. There's no liquid. And I take the stick and I pull it, and all of a sudden I see tire marks across the thing, and then I see the tip of a hanger. And I was like, what? I pick up the hanger, and it's a white fur hoodie.
What?
I was like, what?
What?
And then my 2 girlfriends were in the car, and they're like, oh my God,
wow.
you were just talking about this.
Wow.
And as I'm going, and I literally was like, oh wait, no, it's not dead. It's like just a jacket. And it must have like fallen off some like wardrobe truck or something like that. And so then I got in the car, and everybody my 2 girlfriends were there with me because this was during the time when I was like, I'm going to post a video on YouTube every single day. And so it doesn't, whether how good or how bad it was, I was like, I just have to do this. And so I posted the white fur hoodie manifestation story. And so I and that's when I realized that manifestation was real, but you have to keep yourself in a playful state. You have to just trust that it's going to happen, and it's going to happen on the time that is divine timing, because, and anything that is happening in your life right now, be grateful and accept it for what it is, because anytime...
It's just leading you there.
Right, it's just leading you there, and anything that you're refuting, you're like kicking God in the face. You're like, oh, I know better than God because I'm upset about this. No, like, just trust that there's always a bigger picture.
Yep. But
in that moment, me and my 2 girlfriends were like, manifestation is real.
Yep.
So it was like, manifestation. I don't think you can actually see one of those videos on YouTube. I pretty much erased a lot of those videos, but I'm going to be coming back to do YouTube pretty soon. So after I get this book out. So and the book, The Path of Least Resistance, is coming out 11/11.
I love that, and I may even like jump on that date as we talked about this before we started recording. Piggyback, because my book is going. The Golden Key is going to be available or done and ready right around that same time, and I was like, okay, it's going to be either end of October, probably at the earliest. And, probably more like 1st of November. And then you said 11/11. Oh, yeah, 11/11. So that would be cool. So tentatively, my book, too.
Yeah, you guys are going to be in such a treat. The amount of synchronicity stories that Brandon has is unreal. And I know you guys have heard a lot of them, but they go way deeper and way more spirally and fractally out than I've ever heard anybody's stories.
I haven't shared the Golden Key synchronicities, are the highest level of synchronicity I've ever experienced. I haven't even shared them all. Like, I'll give you guys one little as we. Okay. So let's see. How do I tell this as concisely as possible? So I'm driving. I'm thinking. The song comes on. Do you know the producer DJ Murillo?
Yes.
Okay. So he did a song remix with Kendrick Lamar, and it's like where he calls it "Humble in the Jungle," and it's like my left stroke just went viral, is what Kendrick says in the song, and Murillo's version is like, super like bassy, epic, like epic energy.
Grindy.
And so I'm driving and listening, and that comes on, and I'm like, oh gosh, this song has so much energy. I love it. I'm like really getting in that elevated state that only music can get me in, really. And then I start thinking, I was like, I was thinking a lot about the book too in that moment. Like all the ideas are coming through, and there had been a bunch of synchronicity leading up to it, and so. I'm thinking, my left stroke just went viral. Well, I'm left-handed, and I'm doing this very unique way of releasing it that could very well be viral. And, there's I haven't even told you about yet, some unique elements to how I'm doing it. And I start thinking, just thinking about that, I'm like, oh, cool. Well, you know what? Maybe when I have you and I talked about a release party or a celebration party, when we can have a party here at the Mystic Manor again.
When it's legal.
Yeah, how cool it would be. Like, I'm celebrating the books. I'm imagining myself holding the vision of the book doing really well and, releasing the rest of Optimistic, which has been like some ups and downs with that, as I mentioned earlier. And everything's going really well. And so we finally can have a party and, maybe I'll DJ at one of the parties and I would play this song. And I was like, and then I would start thinking, oh, okay, well, if I played the song and I had like a screen behind me, what would I show on it? And I'm just like kind of fantasizing about it driving. I'm like, oh, you know what? Maybe I'd play that Incubus song from 20 years ago where it's like the Escher style hand. It's a drawing of a hand drawing.
Yeah.
So it's an arm drawing.
Its own hand.
Yeah. And so I'm like, oh, yeah, I could play that. And then I could say, oh, the golden key, as they say, my left stroke just went viral, da-da-da. And then I literally get home. I sit down. 5 minutes later, I open my phone. The first thing posted is Brendan Boyd, who the name Optimistic, actually, I have a lot of synchronicity with him, the lead singer of Incubus. Who, that's a whole nother story. I think I've shared before, but that's like a big synchronicity.
Episode 262.
So he had just posted, like this is 5 minutes of me having this whole 10-minute kind of like fantasizing about this. He posted a picture of a left hand holding a key.
What?
With the word optimistic, like, appearing over top of it, coming.
Oh,
like,
my gosh.
I'm like, what?
You're like,
and behind the key, there's, like, all this magical swirls and stuff. And I'm like, what? Like,
that's amazing.
It was so wild. And that's, like, one of, like, 15 now. It's been really wild.
Right. So. Well, that's the thing is, like, when you've been doing this for so long, like, living your dreams and tapped into that flow, it happens all the time. And it's almost like when you were like, oh, remember, we were going to tell a story about this. And I was like, oh, yeah. I'm like, there's so many, like, how do you do that? But
well, yeah, and what you said earlier is like, holding this vision of it and not being attached to the timing. And what I found is really important is like not having the expectation. Like, for example, this story of this imagination, this playful exploration of my idea going viral and it really tying together with Optimistic, because I'm going to be marketing them together. That helps them both to be propelled into what I feel Optimistic really deserves as far as its recognition that it hasn't really received yet.
Right.
And what's great is where I'm at in my own journey. I have no attachment to any of it. Like, no one could read the book but me and my mom and you.
Right.
And I'd be like, okay, cool. That's okay.
Yeah.
And so it's,
exactly.
I think that's a big part of the recipe is, like you said, don't kick God in the face, trusting the mystery of what's unfolding. You can have these visions and expectations and childlike wonder and daydream all day long, the best, brightest, and most expansive, fun-filled future. And you don't need any of it to appear to be as magical and worthy and beautiful as you are just being where you're at now. You don't need it. It's all icing. And so I think that for me, I'm at a place where I less than ever, I've had enough disappointments that it lead me to a point of like, oh, I'm just so unattached in a good, healthy way. Yeah. With all the expectations still there that magic can and will appear in divine timing. And it'll be even better than I could have hoped those first 25 disappointments.
Right, because like maybe your attachment is having it in this moment or having it tomorrow, but the truth is that it will happen when it is in the divinest timing for all involved.
For the whole world.
Yeah, and that's what you really want.
That's what you really want.
That's what you really want.
Woo! Well, this has been epic. I knew it would be well worth the wait, Jesselynn. I do have one last question for you.
Ruh-roh, Reggie.
In 60 seconds or less.
Okay.
What is the meaning of life according to Jesselynn Desmond?
The meaning of life, like as in the definition of life, or my meaning for me?
Your meaning for you.
The meaning of life for me is to live life to the fullest ability while in such a way that I am positively affecting as many people and helping as many people as I possibly can. And
so it is. You're doing it, and it is epic to do that dance co-creatively with you.
It's so wonderful.
Thank you for being my What was what was the word you used for your partner? Your accountability buddy.
Oh,
Thank you for being my podcastability buddy. This has been awesome. All of you out there listening, thank you all for tuning in. Your beautiful brainwaves and gigantic hearts. Until next time, journey well. Love you all so much.
Peace and blessings. Mwah.
Also, before we sign off, I wanted to remind you about the game with the universe on our website. You can choose the first number that comes to your mind, and it'll pull up that episode number of the podcast. I've been saying this is a great way to co-create synchronicity and magic with your higher self for quite some time. And if you go to positivehead.com/universe, there is a super fun and simple interface to play this game with your higher self. I firmly believe just by setting the intention to play in this way, it opens up the door for magic, and it's a synchronistic way to hone in on nuggets of wisdom out of the huge catalog of episodes that are specifically appropriate for you at this time in your journey to becoming the next greatest and greatest version of yourself. And it also makes for a super fun way to spark the curiosity of friends and family by having them choose a number, so they'll hopefully go and check out their number as well, which I greatly appreciate because it helps us to spread the word about the podcast. Once again, the address is positivehead.com/universe. And as a quick reminder, if you're curious to learn more about Purium superfoods and why I take them almost every day, be sure to also check out positivehead.com/transformation. On this journey of becoming the next greatest and grandest version of ourselves that we have all embarked upon, I cannot stress the importance of managing your physical vibration enough. And quite honestly, Purium has put together the simplest plan I've found to do so. I have my favorite, the appleberry shake, at least 5 times a week. Once again, to learn more about the Purium transformation, go to positivehead.com/transformation. Or if you want to keep it simple and just try out my favorite, the appleberry shake, you can go straight over to ishoppurium.com and be sure to use code positivehead for 25% off. I'll spell that for you. It's ishoppurium.com. And be sure to use your Positive Head 25% coupon code.